We should have asked Darren if he had any offers to go back and run his favorite Saskatchewan sports hockey team like the Woj.
Yes, you see that?
Yeah.
What a Woj bomb this morning. Adrian Wojnarowski is retiring from reporting in general. He's leaving ESPN. He's leaving the basketball world to go back and run a college program. I think it's college, back in his hometown. He's out. Like that says something about that guy's career, the magnitude of insiders, on ESPN. You look at Woj, you look at Schefter, just saying, I'm out. See you later. The season's about to start. The NBA training camps open up in like a week.
It's big bucks, though, probably. They probably threw a boatload of cash.
How much can they pay for? I think it's more Woj.
Bonaventure?
Yeah. What are they paying Woj? What's he doing? What? I don't even know what he's doing there running the basketball program. Sounds like to me he's just had enough. Like he's been doing it forever. And whenever you're
How
in the
many years
States,
has he been doing it?
I think he's been like a reporter for 37 years or something.
But how many years has he been dropping Woj bombs?
At least 15 anyway. He's been at ESPN for 7. He was at Yahoo before.
That'll do it.
Yeah, I think he's been going 15 years heavy. Where if you're ever in the States during June, leading up to the NBA draft and free agency, a lot like hockey up here, Woj is on ESPN 22 hours a day.
He is.
It is staggering how much he's on there. And it's just anything that breaks, Woj is back up. Woj is back up. And I'm sure he's made a lot of money. He had a great career, and he just said, forget it, I'm out of here. Good for him, going out on top. I got an appreciation.
Good on the guy. He's
Yeah.
like, you know what? I've always loved my old stomping grounds. I don't know what his position would be at some college basketball program, but he thought it was a good way to end it.
Yeah.
Probably do it for close to 10 years and it's game over.
See you later,
Go put his
man.
feet up somewhere.
See you later.
How old is he? I'm just checking. 55 years old.
Yeah, he's
it's
still
not like
relatively
he's-
young.
Yeah, he's a young
He'll be
dude.
back. Woj is going to
think
drop
so?
a Michael Jordan just saying, I'm back in a year at the trade deadline. It's like Bobby Mack. Bob McKenzie just shows up at the trade deadline. You're like, hey, there's Bob. And he's got scoops and he's breaking stuff. And that's my guess. Woj will take a break here and then eventually we'll return to form. But Ray's coming up here in a moment. And, camp's opening. There's some teams are on the ice today. Buffalo was on the ice. You see, I was watching video. Lindy Russ snapping on people day
yelling
one.
at them. He's yelling at them about offside in a drill.
In a drill. And Rasmus Dahlin, I guess, got injured.
Yeah,
God, that one sucks so bad.
Yeah, Lindy's just bag skating them and yelling at them day one of camp.
Well, you know what? I thought about this before, and I sent Doogie a note, and kind of on the fly. We could probably ask Ray too. It looks like there's 8 new head coaches, correct? Including Craig Berube, right?
Don't know the full amount, but that sounds about right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I had to look up, but I do remember San Jose has a new coach. Nobody will know his name.
Yeah, he was the assistant coach, wasn't he, before? And
Ryan Warsofsky.
Okay.
So there you go.
Shout out. I'm a fan.
My point is there is going to be the new coach bump. And one of those coaches might be up for Coach of the Year, don't you think? Usually that
It won't be in San Jose, I guarantee you that.
Well, okay, so that's what I'm saying. Dan Bilesma in Seattle.
But why can it be Craig Berube? Let me ask you that.
That's what I was just going to say.
What would the Leafs have to do to get Berube a Jack Adams?
Win the division. For me.
Yeah.
Because
That's
it's regular
probably it.
season, right? It's win the division in a very tough division. If you win the division, that's the new coach bump. Because the Leafs have been, third, right?
They've never won the division.
Right.
Yeah, never. They never, even back in Pat Quinn's era and stuff. They never really won the division.
I just think it would have to be one of those dominant years because our buddy Monty down in Boston, he had that incredible season where it was just
best ever.
Yeah, the best ever season. And Monty, our boy, won the Coach of the Year. Monty, I think, could have won it 2 years in a row.
Yes. Last year was an even more, I think, difficult season for the Bruins.
Impressive, yeah.
And this year is not going to be any easier, too, if Swayman's not there and playing.
Marchand, injury, surgery.
Who won the division last year? Was it Boston? Or
Florida ended up winning.
Remember, Florida won on the last. Wasn't it the last day? That's why the Leafs played
the Bruins. It was uncertain all the way down the stretch. We were doing that. Who are they going to play? Who's it better for them to play? Bruins or Panthers?
But
Panthers ended up winning it.
That's why I'm saying you got Dean Evison in Columbus, but there's Toronto, Buffalo, New Jersey, Ottawa. That will probably
Travis Green's a sneaky one to maybe sprinkle on. If they get in, there's your Jack Adams.
Well, and Sheldon Keefe too.
Yes.
Right? That's another one.
But it's almost as if in Jersey, people aren't saying you just got to get in. It's like they've blown past that.
Right.
You got to return to like 108 points or 110 points and win the division. Like the expectations are so high. Yeah. And upgraded goaltending. All right. Joining us now on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Here's our ESPN hockey analyst, Ray Ferraro. What's happening, Ray? How was the summer, buddy?
Summer was good. It's short somehow, you know? Like, it feels like it's time to get going, but it's like, it feels like, geez, like we just finished.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
You know, it's a bit of an odd thing, and then start reading about camps and, you know, everything's big news right out of the blocks, and whether it is or isn't, but it's news again, and it's time to get going.
Well, I'm curious if you get flashbacks, and Noodles, maybe you guys do the same. Like we were just saying, a lot of teams in the league simply just have physicals. They do their media, and they say, all right, you know, I'll put my skates on tomorrow, we'll get on the ice. Today, Buffalo was on the ice, and Lindy Ruff was snapping, like blowing his whistle down, shutting drills down, losing it on people. Darlene got hurt in practice. Like,
don't you think Hazy probably planned on? He's like, I'm going to send a message that this is not going to be a clown show at all.
Which I understand and appreciate. I guess what I'm asking you is, you know, former players are always like, back in my day, we, you know, 2-a-days, we're on the ice 4 times the first. Like, was that the case for you, or did you allow yourself to ease into training camp at all?
No, when I started, there was still 2-a-days.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And they were miserable. It was like camp was like going to prison.
Right.
It was.
You go in there and you'd be like, oh man, we got to be at the rink at, you know, like on the ice at 9. So you had to get there, you know, just before 8, and you'd skate or do whatever. Then there was a break in the middle of the day, and then you'd go back on in the afternoon, and your gear was wet, and you know, like it sucked. It was terrible. And if you could just get through the first week of camp without pulling a groin or, you know, like hurting your back, not hurting your back, but like being so stiff you couldn't move. When I saw that thing about Lindy Ruff, I was like, not that I would have thought of it, but I would have bet on that. That yes. Like that was, I'm with O on that. I think you probably had that you could have picked a time in the day that he was going to lose it. You know, like, here's the new message, here's the new coach. Most of the guys figure it's coming anyway. And, you know, they've been out of the playoffs a long, long time. And for the older guys, you kind of take a deep breath and just continue on. For the younger guys, I mean, it's new. It's all new. But heck, there's not 8 jobs open. It's not, you know, like, it's not like it. That was, I'd say, aside from the 2-a-days, that was the biggest thing. Is there used to be 4 or 5 jobs per camp. It seemed like that were open. They were like full-on competition, and it's just not that way anymore.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you guys felt, and Ray, but I hated the fitness testing. Like, that was what I dreaded. It's like, okay, the weigh-in, the fat test, you're bleeding yourself right that last 2 weeks to make sure that you make weight, all of that type of stuff.
Noodles, I contemplated putting $20,000 in a duffel bag to give it to the fat test lady and say, write down 5%.
$20,000 cash.
Seriously, like
American.
Just act like you have a knapsack and unzip it and say, write down 5%, and you take the knapsack and we walk, and nothing to be said here.
Do you guys remember when they first came up with, like, before it became widespread, but you had to do the Wingate and
yes.
then the VO2 test?
Yeah.
And it's like the Wingate, we'd never heard of it. And for those that don't know, it's a 30-second full-out sprint. You're pedaling the bike, and then they drop weight. And so the weight is something equal to your body weight, and it makes the wheel almost stop. And you got to pedal as fast as you can, and it takes like your power and stuff like that. So we thought the first year, we thought, well, it's 30 seconds. We could do this in the morning, and then take a little break and do the and do it in the after. Do the VO2 in the afternoon. Paul McDermott, whose son Curtis plays in the league. Dermy was like the first guy that did it. He did the Wingate 30 seconds, puked, and everybody was like, what the hell happened there? Like, nobody had any idea how hard it was. And we're like, geez, man, camp, we got to do that too? Like, it's not like now guys go into camp, they do their physicals, they're all in shape. Like, we had 30 days to get in shape.
I only did good in one event, the grip strength test.
Yeah, I was good on the grip. I was good on the grip strength.
I failed. You know when you had to bend down? You had to lie on the floor and push the piece of wood on the hamstring test.
Past your toes, yeah.
Yeah, fail. She's like, you didn't even move the thing. And I'm like, who cares?
Are you the trainer
I remember
or player?
saying every year, because it was the same lady doing the hamstring. Yeah, what did you say, Hayes?
Are you the mascot or do you play for the team?
She's like, you didn't even move the piece of wood. And I said, you can write down whatever you want in this thing. This was a stupid test. I got up and left every time.
Andrew Brunette used to lead the stretch and say, all right, touch your knees. Like, that's as far as he was going. Played 1,000 games in the league.
Yeah.
There was some insane tests. Like, I remember Mike Milbury. I don't know if you were at that camp, Ray, where Milbury said you had to come in and you had to run 2 miles in under 12 minutes. And if you didn't do it, you had to run 5 miles in 35 minutes the next day. So I was like, I was able to do it, but there were guys that missed it, like Mick Vukota, Tommy Salo. There were guys that were Zygmunt Palffy. They were so mad that they had to run the next day. And guys were like, it's just a test, but it's like, what has that got to do with hockey? Like, I'm not a runner. I hated it. Like, it was awful. Some of these tests, we had to do a wall seat for 5 minutes.
Oh,
me and Ron Hextall,
gross.
A wall seat.
Gross.
Like, just ridiculous stuff. But you know what? I think testing is a lot different nowadays other than these barbaric type of stuff that we went through back in the day.
Do you guys remember Bill LaForge?
Oh, yeah.
He was like this legendary Western Hockey League coach. He coached the Canucks for 20 games, and then they fired him. But in his training camp, if your team lost in scrimmage, you had to run 2 miles in your equipment. Just picture you're out there with your shin pads on trying to run 2 miles.
So embarrassing. There's people around, like a school bus goes by with kids. You're like, what are we doing out here, man? This is just outrageous behavior.
I've got the most embarrassing fitness of all time. In Winnipeg, I screwed up my foot, and I think Paul Maurice had enough of me. And it is now that it wouldn't get better. He made me sit in that old Winnipeg arena in the main concourse with a bike, and I had to sit on the ground and pedal the bike with my arms in the main concourse in my underwear. And people were walking by me in Winnipeg saying, "Look at this troll loser." Because I was literally like, I can't do anything. Like, my foot, sit on the bike.
Yeah, he hated your guts.
I can't think of an amount of money I would not pay to watch that.
I know.
Yeah, I'm literally like watching people walk by, and I'm like, this is so embarrassing. In my undershorts, pedaling the bike on the ground with my arms.
That's a makeshift. Nowadays, it's called. Isn't it called a Ubi? The Ubi, like that's what it's the makeshift.
No, it was one of those old garbage white and blue bikes that they had in the locker room.
That's so good.
I had to lie. He said, "Lie. I can't pedal the bike." He said, "Well, lie on the ground and sit your ass on the back of it so it doesn't come up, and pedal the bike with your arms." Okay,
Man, that's tough. That's the National Hockey League, though. I guess you got to do what you're told, man. Right? The head coach tells you to do something. You got to do what you're told. With Ray Ferraro, the head coach here in Toronto, confirmed some reports, Ray, that William Nylander will start the year up the middle of the ice. They tried it last year in camp. It lasted like 2 days, and they said, screw it. You're going back to the wing. But he's going to do it. I think Max Domi's going to play on his wing. What does that tell you about the Maple Leafs thinking? Not necessarily just about Willie, but how they feel about that position up the middle of the ice.
Well, when I read it, I mean, the first thing that pops into my mind is like, man, that's going to be no fun defensively to play, right? Like center is way harder, and there's so much work below the hash marks that he's never had to do, and will be a total flip on its ear. But the more I think of it, the reason it could work is that he's not going to be there anyway. That when the puck goes in the defensive zone and it gets low, that Domi will just flip into that type of work. Like, he will do that stuff. The reason you put Nylander at center is that once you retrieve the puck, he gets into the middle of the ice. And that now you've got him not on the wall, but in the middle where he can use, what is most obvious is like his skating and his puck handling. I would find it hard I'm finding it hard to imagine him playing the position 200 feet all year. Like, that's, I mean, if he does it, that's really pretty crazy, actually, that he'd be able to do it, because he hasn't done it for, forever.
Right. Well,
I mean, I guess since junior, but it's a different world ago. So that's how I could see it working, is that somebody else is doing all the mucky-muck down low, and he would jump into the middle of the ice and kind of play center 170 feet as opposed to the full ice.
Yeah, and that's going to take a lot of communication, right? Everyone on the ice. To me, it also says that they don't believe John Tavares is capable of being a number 2 center on a championship caliber team. Like, that's kind of what this is also saying to me. That part of it is about Tavares. That, like, we need to find someone else up the middle of the ice. We have to put Willie there. And I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if it'll last. And I think John's still a very capable player. But I think a part of this is if John Tavares in April is playing 20 minutes and you're number 2 center, they don't know if that can work. And they need to find something that can, or try something that they think can.
But if they're going to try it, they can't try it for 2 games or 2 days.
Yeah, you got to commit to it at this point.
Like, I would say this is like, to get this through. The preseason games are one thing. I mean, like, I'm sure we got as many stories as we had about training and testing. We've got about preseason games that are, they're the next stage of the season, but they're not even really a game. Like, you've got to give this a 5 or 10 game run here and see. It's going to be so different for him. One of the things that I remember is late in my career, I got stuck on the wing because, I couldn't skate anymore either. And so everything happens in a different direction. Like, the traffic comes, the forecheck comes, the pressure from the D all comes from a different angle than if you're in the middle of the ice. And if you're on the wall, you've only got one way you can go, and that's to the middle of the ice. Otherwise, you're going straight up the boards, right? That's it. Otherwise, you run into the wall. So when Nylander gets a pass, he's going to have to adjust to, maybe the blind side D would pinch in, or a forechecker coming over top that he would never have to do as a winger. And that's going to take time to see if it actually works or not. It's interesting for sure. I mean, you can't create a new player, right? You can't create a new centerman. So maybe you get lucky and this works, or maybe you just revert to normal if it doesn't.
Well, and don't you have the luxury? Hayes brought this up yesterday, and I agree with him. It's, Willie's not playing for a deal. If Willie gets 85 points or 95 points or 100, whatever it is, like, he's comfortable in his skin. He's got a long-term deal. They've committed to him. He's committing to the team to try and win. To try something new, I don't think it's going to be a detriment to him. Psychologically going, God, I'm playing for a contract and I'm uncomfortable in this position. Willie's a guy who's really, I think, very poised and very relaxed. So if he tries something and they give him a run for a month and maybe he doesn't have the success that you expect maybe on the scoreboard, I don't think it would affect or derail his whole season.
I totally agree. I mean, I don't. It doesn't look like much bothers him, really.
Right.
And so he's probably the perfect guy, and this is the perfect time to try it. New coach, new systems. They're clearly going to change some of the ways in their system that they play. And so while everybody's kind of getting used to the changes Berube will make to opposed to the way Sheldon Keefe plays, even if they're just subtle, there'll be changes. Well, this is a great time to try it. I just don't. I'm trying to think of other wingers that moved to center, and it was a really good idea. And I'm probably missing some, but I can't come up with any. I can get you some that go the other way, winger to or center to wing, but not wing to center.
Right.
Tell me one guy that's liked it too, or wanted to do it.
Well, when aside from the I couldn't skate, going to the wing was so much different.
Oh, it's fantasy land. That's what it is. It's fantasy land.
If your centerman can pass the puck, you're going to get chances.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to play in center that make. And you're not a bad team that you're just saying, hey, try this, and if you're minus 23 and you get 70 points, that's great. This is clearly a top third of the league team, and they're trying to find, like everybody else, could this be something that makes us a little better? That makes us, 5% better. Because everybody's looking for a small margin.
What is your season-long Mitch Marner? What are you expecting out of Mitch Marner this year?
Oh, I think he'll get 90-plus points. I do. I mean, there's no way to think that he would all of a sudden fall off the map and not get any point. I don't see that. I think there's we see how defensive he gets. When he starts talking about himself and the team, and he's very defensive, very protective of himself. But I think in that there's a "F you, I'll show you" to him, and I think he'll have a good year. I would be more surprised if he doesn't than if he does. And I guess I look at the team, and we look at the top players because they're the ones that are going to drive everything. And you're like, can they be better than last year's team? Right? Because we know they're going to get in the playoffs. We know they're going to have 100 points there, or right around there. Whatever they get, it's going to be right around that number. And it's such a weird spot because none of it matters. None of it matters until they get into the playoffs. And what can they do? What is your bar for success? And making the playoffs isn't it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you're spot on, and I think that's been the case here for years. Yet there's turnover, there is change, yet there's a lot of familiarity with the main guys. The five main players have been here for a long, long time. And, you go across the country, and, every year you try to project how many teams are going to make the playoffs. I think the Leafs are going to get there. I think Edmonton will get there. I think Vancouver will get there. I think Winnipeg will get there. Where does your list kind of come to an end if you're looking at the 7 Canadian teams on day one of camp?
Well, I would include Ottawa.
You think Ottawa's going to get in?
I think they're going to be right there.
Really?
It would be impossible for me to think that Ullmark doesn't make an enormous difference there. Clearly he's going to play behind a team that doesn't play the way the Bruins did, right? He's going to see some different looks than he got in Boston. But I think he makes a really big difference. One thing that Travis Green does, and Jamie and I know him too. We know him well. Is that he's going to coach the team to play harder and more stiffly defensively. That team will compete differently. Norris will be is healthy. I guess I saw today he's got a full run at camp. They'll have Pinto from the start of the year. It's a pretty good lineup. It really is a pretty good lineup, and I think they're going to be sniffing right around the edge of it. I mean, they're as good as Washington. Washington made it last year. I'm sure a lot of teams are like, who's going to be the team that falls back? Can we leapfrog Washington? There's probably about 3 teams that think that they can do that.
Yeah.
Ray, you talked about Lindy Ruff, that plan kind of losing it on day one. There's an opportunity for Ullmark, who played for the Boston Bruins and great defensive teams. First preseason game where he sees some kind of gong show after the game or in between periods, that's where he can tee off on everybody and say, if you guys think that's even close to what good teams do, think about it, because it's not. Like that's something that to me would resonate.
We brought in Mike Liut. We were in Hartford. We had a bunch of young guys. They brought in Mike Liut in the trade, and we kicked away like a game. He came in March, so it was late in the year. We were going to miss the playoffs.
From where?
He came from St. Louis, and he was established at that time as one of the best in the game. And we had a 6-4 lead late. We blew it, lost in overtime. And he flipped over the cart in the room and basically said exactly what you just said. If you guys think we're going to win like that, that's a joke. And we had never had anybody stand in like that. We weren't good enough. Nobody knew that. And I don't know if that's Ullmark's personality, but he has a chance to be I know Brady Tkachuk's the leader there, but he has a chance to be really at the forefront of that team. Mm-hmm. If they're making the playoffs, he's got an enormous part of it. He can't just be okay. And you're right. If there's something early and he jumps on that early, that will matter a lot. It does. Some guys talk a lot. Some guys don't have to talk a lot to send their message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, goaltending, it's such a huge part of the projection. Whenever we bring up Vancouver these days and you're out there, you're living it, it's Demko. It's what's his status? Is he healthy? Can you rely on him? What happens if he's out? But I think that's reasonable.
If he's out, they got a problem.
Exactly. It's a reasonable conversation. It's not overreacting. You're not talking about who's the third pair defense. It's the starting goalies. Maybe their best player.
Well, because he's a hell of a player. He's a star, right?
He's a great
player.
It's
not just the starting goalie. He's one of the very best in the league. And you know, as much as Shelovs did a really nice job last year when he came in, Demko's one of the best in the league. And if he were not able to play much, or as much as they need him to play, that would be big news. Now, one team, it's funny, we'll get through camp here, and teams will have injuries, and teams will be jockeying around and trying to make a late ad or whatever. But Detroit has got at least 4 goalies sitting there that need waivers at the end of camp.
And I think Kosa or whatever, that he needs waivers. There's 5
right, so
actually.
That's 5.
Right? Yeah. Sebastian Kosa or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they've, for teams that, they're going to wait right to the end of the camp, and Detroit's going to have to do something with those guys. And it's, who is it? It's Husso and Lyon and Campbell.
And Talbot.
Yeah.
And Talbot. Well, Talbot, they just signed. So
he's playing.
Yeah. So all of a sudden you're like, man, these guys will garner interest, especially because none of them make any. Well, Husso makes $3 million, but the other guys are affordable and reasonable. And man, it's going to be a crowd at the end. And so, will Vancouver be one of those teams? Maybe. Depends what Demko is. But I couldn't tell you. I don't think anybody knows. I don't even know if he's skating yet.
That's troubling.
Skating to be ready for camp, or if they're just going to ease him in later in camp. So it's he's would be an important player to watch for sure.
Absolutely. All right, first day of camp. We're off and running here. Good stuff, buddy. Good to have you back in the swing of things. We'll do it again down the road.
Yeah, you bet. Second day of camp. I'm on the tee at 8:42 tomorrow.
Yes, as you should be. Pacific time. I love it.
Just making it.
Enjoy yourself. Thanks, buddy.
Good to talk to you guys. Have a good one.
You too. Ray Ferraro joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner, Highlander, and Grand Highlander, in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. I think if you're an Ottawa Senator fan, you love hearing that. Ray's throwing them into the mix. That's a good sign. And,
we were talking about it yesterday. If you could make a case for them to find 5 more wins That's 10 more points. That puts him in that mix where you were talking about 5 points in, 5 points out. Because Washington's was 92 points, right? They were 78. So if they end up in that high 80s or low 90s, they are in that mix. Doesn't guarantee them to make it in. They need
They could switch it up and not lose the first 20 again.
That's their play.
What it is.
That's what.
Oh
If you're
God.
Travis
Tell me
Green,
about it.
you're just
Tell me about
basically demanding it. Like, guys, get like the pace car. The start of the year is so significant.
Yeah.
Sure, if you're a really good team, you can get out of it, but even that's difficult. But it can happen if you're an elite team. They're not an elite team. They have to start like 6-4, 7-3.
You say it every year, Brian. Every good team that gets in, they have a stretch where it's like 17 of 20 games.
Yes,
wins, and you're
Points
in.
and, yeah,
And
exactly.
bank points. You have to do it. And if you're chasing, especially in that division, I don't think you're going to be able to catch up. All right, Gerry's percentages coming up later this afternoon. Steve Phillips will join us as well on the return of Bo Bichette when he saw it at Bo last night. OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.
You're going to want to hear this.
Gerry's percentages.
I don't love being commissioner as much as I used to. I actually love it even more.
That's the voice of a Hall of Famer.
Are you kidding? Have you been out drinking?
You're all pigeons. Filthy, filthy pigeons.
It's Gerry, Gerry.
All right, Gerry's percentages brought to you by Boston Pizza, the best place for any family meal. Plus, for the month of September, kids eat free with minimum purchase when you dine in. So grab the kids and hustle into your local BP tonight. Gerry's got no time for an opening statement. He's a busy man. He's right into the takes. All right?
All right.
Let's
do
going
it.
here.
My man Donnie Sweeney is losing his mind in Boston over this Gerry Swayman contract. And I don't blame him, because the Bruins will start the year without their number one goalie.
Gerry Swayman. So Gerry's saying this negotiation will go all through camp. They'll get to opening night, and Swayman will remain unsigned. Wow.
I don't think that's going to happen. I'm going to say 15% that happens. I know that Boston can dig in at times, but cooler heads prevail, and you just realize, like, we want our number one guy in there, and we don't want this to be a distraction, and we're gonna get this done. There's no other way around it.
Yeah, I'm 10% because you're right. I don't know. Don Sweeney seemed really pissed today. Like that almost led to me to believe that like maybe something is around the corner. They have been talking, cooler heads or whatever to bridge the gap. Be interesting to see how far apart they are in the gap. If it's, Swayman asking for 10 and they're at 7 or 6 or, I could see him getting something with an 8 in it, realistically. Like personally, I think just with the cap growing, him being a number one, maybe it's more, but I could, based on how he is into his career. He hasn't played a ton of games.
Yeah, I think 8 would be, honestly, I believe 8 would be more than fair. It's like his sample size. He hasn't been around that long. It's just, that's what it is, man.
I agree. His agent is Louis Gross.
Yeah.
That was the same agent for William Nylander. William Nylander sat in Sweden until November 30th.
All right, if he got pissy and he got the number to 8, Hayes, and he said no, like that's still not cutting it, I'd walk from the player if the player's not doing that.
And you got Korpisalo and who? Michael DiPietro as your
no,
goalies?
they got
Bussy?
Brandon Bussy. He's a nice goalie. He's a big lefty.
The Bussy?
What else are you going to do, Hayes? You can't just cave. Like you just got to say,
I hear you. What I'm saying is I'm not convinced that Swayman will just be the one to say, fine, let's get something done here. Like if his agent's the one running the show, I'm going to say 49% to answer
the
this
agent
one.
doesn't run any show. The player tells the agent what to do.
That's fine, but
here's the one thing that I will point out. I know we're down on Korpisalo. New team, different defensive structure. He has been a starting goaltender in this league, and they bridged the gap. They got him for $3 million. Like this, they could start the season with Korpisalo and Brandon Bussy, and they would be fine because Korpisalo's a good goaltender. Yes, he didn't play great for Ottawa last year, but if you look at his body of work, how he played on a good team in LA, played very well. So, they might be saying, we might wait this thing out knowing that we have a guy who can play and play games.
It's all leverage and pressure points,
There it
man.
is.
But today
and
was
that's
one of
Boston's leverage where they can
Yeah,
say,
you're right.
you know what, we'll just start without you. We got a guy that's capable, we
those.
think.
I hear you.
And
You're
if he's a gas can in 10 games, then you got to sear. Then the leverage
Well,
goes the
but-
other way.
Yeah. But I mean, what if he starts 7-2? Then you're like, okay, we'll wait this out. Like I say, I think keep in mind, Korpisalo was a $5 million goaltender. Didn't play like it, last year, but he's played very well in this league. Didn't he beat the Leafs in Game 5? Wasn't it him?
Yeah,
in that,
he
or
was
it
in Columbus.
Elvis?
Yeah,
He's played well. He's been a good goalie in this league.
he'll bounce back. Last year
I think
was
so.
was particularly awful, though.
It's an outlier.
Like it was really, really rough. But I don't know. I'm just not as convinced. Like day one, today's a big line in the sand. Yes, you're not playing games, but he's not there at camp. Like that's pretty significant for players. You guys can speak to it.
It is.
If he's willing to go to this one, why isn't he willing to go to the next one?
Yeah. No,
I don't know. We'll see.
I agree.
All right, what do we have next?
Mitch Marner will thrive under Craig Berube and have his best season ever.
There's a positive one from Gerry.
Yeah.
He thinks Mitch and Craig Berube are going to connect, and Marner's going to have the best season of his career.
I 100% agree with this. 100%.
Wow.
Wow, that's a big statement there.
All right, 100%. Craig Berube. I mean, it's not like we're talking about unlocking a guy who has 40 points.
Right.
Like Marner is one of the best players in the league and has put up unbelievable seasons throughout his 8-year career.
Yeah.
So how does it get better than him at his height? I don't know.
I just think Craig Berube, I think the one little thing that he can instill in these guys, and we talk about it a lot, the playing for keeps element. And I think that will be installed and implemented and fired up and go.
100%. I love it.
You're adding just adjectives.
Yeah, just keep going. How much further can you go with that?
Fired up.
Yeah, filling
I
up.
thought
the
I
tank.
described it as good as it could
I
be
think it was very
described.
well done.
I'm high on this, but I'm not that high. There's just too many factors involved. But I would say I'm going to be 84%. I think Mitch is going to have a great season. I think Craig Berube is going to be good for him. But he's playing for a contract. There's just so much on the line
That's
here.
it, man. I mean, it sounds like you'll start with Matthews, and that's going to be significant too. I mean, the best way to unlock any player's potential is probably to play with Austin Matthews.
Yeah, and it's just a little thing. Like it's playing a man's game. Like bebopping it off your skates and off your helmet out of the zone. Nobody cares about that. Not one of those guys with gray hair and fat asses up in the press box, or like who run teams or organize. They don't care about that stuff because it doesn't matter. It doesn't work. It doesn't win. Just play a man's game, and you're so good, you're going to get 100 points.
Well, that's the thing. Like I think there's a chance his points actually don't hit that level of total, but it kind of looks and feels like a more, I don't want to say complete game because he's a complete player. He does everything for this team. PP1, PK1, top line. He plays generally more minutes than any other forward. Like that's not going to change. So even assessing what it's going to look like to be considered the best season of his career is tough because we probably are talking about playoff success in order for that to be defined. Right. Like if he has a huge playoffs and they win and he factors into a number of big games and a big win, he could have 50 points. If he has a huge playoff run, then that'll be his greatest season ever.
Right.
So that's where I wonder if Berube can help unlock that. I'll say 60%. I'm not going to be as optimistic as you guys because he's had some great seasons. And I'm not as convinced that he reacts to the contract positively. I'm not saying he won't. I don't know that he won't, but I also don't know that he will. I don't know his
Well, in a
his
land
frame
of when
mind
you
right
usually get the contract and it's the buck stopped at him, that would kind of cause some
right. Like the other guys got theirs, and maybe he gets his. Maybe it happens. Maybe just like Bell and Rogers this morning. Next thing you know, Marner signs an extension tonight. And it catches everybody off guard. That's possible. But like Matthews knew it was coming. It was just on him to sign it. The deal was done. It was on Austin to say, "Fine, I'll take this. This is what I want." Willie, to an extent, as well. Like the Leafs were trying to get it done, and Willie eventually said, "Fine, that's the number. I'll sign it." I don't know if they're in the same position with Mitch, and if they're not, I don't know how he's going to react to that. All right, what else do we have, Gerry?
Tom Brady needs to snap out of his stupor and start bringing some Gerry levels of heat to the broadcast booth. A booth he'll be in calling games for at least the next 3 seasons.
Okay, well, we've wondered that. Will TB12 just say, screw it, I'm out of here, it's not for me? By the end of the year, by the end of next season, Gerry's saying no dice. He will be there for at least 3 years calling games with Burkhart and Fox.
95%. And there's 375 million reasons that he would stay there in the booth. Yeah. A lot of people forget that. They're like, oh, he's just a competitor. He wants to play again. He wants to be in management. They're giving the man $375 million. That will keep your ass in that booth. Mm-hmm. Ups, downs, good, no good. Although, if he really stunk the joint out and for a duration, he would say, this is maybe not for me. I could see him possibly walking away and keeping his pride and saying I tried it and it just didn't work. But he's smart enough to figure it out, and he will figure it out, and he'll be good enough, and he'll do it, and he'll get paid. Yeah,
I just think 3 years in his life is very long. I feel like he's still trying to find himself in retirement, and there might just be something else of a challenge. I'm not 100% on this, but I'm 62%. Over 50, but I think there still might be challenges where he's I'm going to be an owner. I'm going to do this. I'm going to spin into something else. Didn't he lose $30 million in crypto or something?
He was caught up in that.
So he might get back into doing some other business stuff. Who knows with this guy? But I think he's going to work hard at it, and I thought he was a lot better week 2, and he's going to continue to get better.
Well, I mean, you're both making compelling cases, and he's making $37 million a year or something to call games. He's basically a quarterback still in the league. The amount of money he's making. So that is one reason to stay on it. But I think I'm going to say 51%. I'm just into the majority because I lean towards what you're saying, Noodles. It feels like he's winging it. You know what I mean? He was so focused on football, career, Super Bowl. Since he retired, it's I'm in Europe now. I'm going around the world. I'm going to tennis tournaments. I own a soccer team. Now I do that. He's all over the place. And I don't know if he's going to want to stay committed to one thing. And even though it is a lot of money, he's still got a lot of money. And whatever else he wants to do, he's going to make a lot of money. So I don't think he needs to commit to really anything if you're Tom Brady. All right, we'll come back with a continuation of Gerry. Gerry has more takes in the chamber. We'll continue Gerry's next.
Bowden Francis has a sick stash and a sick arm. And he'll be a full-time member of the Blue Jays rotation next season.
All right, I wasn't prepared for Gerry Raw just right out of the gate there. I
Gerry
love it.
Raw.
Gerry Raw.
There's a side segment right there.
There is.
Gerry Raw. All right, so he's got Bowden Francis. He loves his stash, and he loves his stuff. And he's saying this guy breaks camp, and he's a part of the rotation all year next season.
That's 95%. How could you not be jacked up about that guy's possibilities for tomorrow or next season? You're kind of hoping, maybe this guy is a massive stud next year, and he's our guy. Kind of like Manoah crept up and became the guy. You're hoping he makes that transition.
That's it. He's on the mound tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing him pitch.
Yes.
And I'm not going to be as high. I don't want to doubt the guy, but, he had been around he's not 20 years old. And he's had
it's
magical
difficult not
2 months.
to have a high percentage when he twice in his last 2 or 3 outings he's had a no-no going into 9.
And his numbers have been great even outside of those games. I'm going to say 75%, which again is crazy high when you consider where we would have been a few months ago. I have no doubt they show up to camp with that expectation. If he has a good camp, he'll undoubtedly break camp as a part of that rotation. But he's got to prove he can do it all year.
Yeah.
Right? He's got to get to this date next year where it's that guy's on the mound and it's just routine. He's still got to prove he can do that.
Yeah, I'm 65% on this. I'd like to see it. I think we all want to see it, but you need more sample size. You need,
going.
Plus second time around, people start to pick up on your book a little bit, pick up on your tendencies. So it'll be interesting to see how he responds to. He needs a good offseason to come back in and focus. Can't rest on his laurels.
Absolutely. Back on the mound tonight, Bowden Francis. All right, Gerry, let's go.
Heard Chris Letang pumping Sid the Kid's tires today, and Gerry's here to echo those sentiments, because Sid can and will play beyond this 2-year extension.
All right, 4 years from now, we're still talking about Sid playing in the league.
I don't think so. I think it'll be game over after the 2-year extension. It's a long time, man.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of miles on that rack.
Pretty good still.
He is pretty good, but
man.
I just think he'll say, I'm playing this year, I'm playing 2 more, and then check, please.
Okay. All right, I'm high on this that he keeps playing. I'm 70% this guy's playing into his 40s.
He's a hockey lifer, man. And he will play until the body just shuts right down.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to be Yager that's kind of rumbling around out there at 50-some years old. And
Yager, just hang it up. Stop playing for 3 years so you can go into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We get it. You got to play in the Czech League, a couple games.
I know.
Just stop.
Yeah, but I think Sid will outlive this contract and go
I
more.
totally agree. I think
Yags doing that again this year.
Yeah, every year he owns the team, and then he starts. I don't think he plays every game, but he's like, I'll go out and play a few games, and then it counts as a professional game.
I think he got hurt though. That's my understanding.
Well, I mean, listen, I don't want to see the guy get hurt or anything, but I want to see he's going into the Hall of Fame. He's just got to stop playing.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Gerry's Percentage is brought to you by Boston Pizza, the best place for any family meal. Plus, for the month of September, kids eat free with minimum purchase when you dine in. So grab the kids and hustle into your local BP tonight. Gerry's After Dark in less than an hour. Steve Phillips coming up. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.